When a man tells you you're overreacting, what he's really saying is that your emotions are inconvenient to him. He's not addressing the issue. He's not showing concern, and he's definitely not listening. Instead, he's shutting you down with one quick sentence that flips the problem back onto you. It sounds like he's making the situation smaller, but what he's really doing is making you feel smaller. And that's not respect, that's dismissal. Think about the power dynamic in that moment. You bring up something that bothers you, maybe calmly, maybe with frustration, maybe with tears. It doesn't matter because feelings are feelings. Instead of leaning in with curiosity, he pushes you away with criticism. He doesn't have to raise his voice or even look angry, but the effect is the same. You're left questioning yourself instead of the issue at hand. That's what emotional invalidation looks like, and it's dangerous because it eats away at your confidence over time. The phrase, "you're overreacting," is a weapon dressed up as advice. On the surface, it can sound like he's helping you calm down, but underneath, it's about silencing you. If he really cared about your emotions, he would want to understand what triggered them. He would want to know why you feel the way you feel. Telling you that you're overreacting is like saying your reaction is the problem, not the thing that caused the reaction. That's backwards, and it creates a pattern where you stop trusting your own feelings and start prioritizing his comfort over your truth. This sentence is also about control. If someone can convince you that you're always too much, they gain the upper hand in the relationship. They set the standard that only their emotions are valid, while yours are exaggerated or irrational. Slowly, you stop speaking up. Slowly, you keep things inside. Slowly, you lose your voice. And that's the point. They don't have to argue with you if they can make you argue with yourself. It's not just a conversation tactic, it's emotional conditioning, and it chips away at the foundation of self-worth. Now, it's important to recognize that everyone slips up in communication sometimes. We all say things out of stress or frustration, but there's a difference between a one-off bad response and a repeated pattern of dismissal. If you notice that every time you express a boundary, share disappointment, or show vulnerability, he responds with, "You're overreacting. You're not in a conversation, you're in a cycle." And cycles like that don't break by you becoming quieter, calmer, or less emotional. They break by you realizing the pattern and stepping away from it. A healthy response sounds different. A man who values you might say, "I didn't realize this upset you, can you tell me more?" Or, "I didn't mean it that way, but I want to understand how it came across." Notice the difference. One version pushes you down, the other leans in to learn. It's not about perfection in communication, it's about direction. Is he moving toward understanding, or is he moving toward dismissal? That's the real test of character, and his words will tell you everything you need to know if you listen closely. So when you hear "you're overreacting," don't just hear the sentence. Pay attention to the message behind it. Pay attention to how it makes you feel. Pay attention to whether this is a one-time defense mechanism or a consistent strategy to keep you in line. And most of all, pay attention to whether you start doubting yourself more than you should. Because the goal of healthy communication isn't to make you second-guess your emotions, it's to make space for them. When a man says, "If you loved me, you would," it's not a request, it's a manipulation. Those words are designed to make you prove your love by doing something you're not comfortable with. Instead of love being about care, respect, and mutual support, he turns it into a test that you can never quite pass. And the danger here is that love becomes a bargaining chip, not a safe space. Real love doesn't require conditions, it creates freedom. But this phrase tries to trap you into submission disguised as devotion. At first, it may not even sound harmful. It could be something small like, "If you loved me, you'd spend more time with me," or "If you loved me, you'd let me do this." But over time, those small requests become bigger ones. "If you loved me, you'd keep this secret." "If you loved me, you wouldn't question me." "If you loved me, you'd give up your boundaries." What starts as a simple phrase quickly grows into a system of control where you feel guilty for having needs, limits, or a voice. And guilt, when tied to love, is one of the strongest tools of manipulation. This sentence also reveals how he views love, not as something he gives, but as something he can demand. It's a transaction in his mind, not a relationship. He places the weight of proof entirely on you, while he carries nothing. Think about the imbalance here. Your love is constantly under trial, while his behavior is excused simply because you're supposed to show him devotion. That's not partnership, that's pressure. And the more you accept it, the more the balance tips in his favor until you start living to meet his expectations instead of sharing life together. The phrase, "If you loved me, you would," often shows up when he wants you to ignore your instincts. It's a way of overriding your natural hesitation. Maybe you don't feel comfortable with what he's asking. Maybe you know deep down it crosses your values. Maybe it just doesn't sit right with you. But instead of respecting your hesitation, he reframes it as a lack of love. And that's where the danger lies. Because once you start proving your love by betraying yourself, you begin losing the very self that made you lovable in the first place. Healthy love doesn't need proof. It shows up in actions, respect, patience, and presence. A man who truly values you will never say, "If you loved me, you would," because he doesn't need to question your love in the first place. He'll already see it in your efforts, your words, your consistency, and he'll never want you to sacrifice your dignity or your values just to make him feel secure. Real love doesn't ask you to shrink yourself. It asks you to bring your whole self, and it makes room for it. The most damaging part of this phrase is the long-term impact it has on your confidence. When you keep hearing, "If you loved me, you would," you begin to believe that saying no equals not loving enough. You start associating your boundaries with rejection, and that creates a dangerous cycle where you ignore your own needs in order to hold on to the relationship. But what's really happening is that you're being trained to equate love with sacrifice, while he equates love with power. And that is not love, it's control, wrapped in a sentence that sounds sweet on the surface. So whenever you hear that line, pause. Ask yourself, is this about love or is this about leverage? Is this about building connection or about breaking down your boundaries? Because love is never a test you have to pass. It's a trust you build together. And anyone who tries to make you prove it with conditions is showing you that they don't understand love at all. When a man says, "You're lucky I'm with you," it might sound playful at first, but underneath it carries a heavy message. It's not just a joke, it's a reminder meant to place him above you. Instead of being a partner who values you, he's framing himself as the prize, while you're the one who should be grateful. And when that line gets repeated enough, it shifts the balance of the relationship from equal footing to a one-sided hierarchy where he holds the higher ground and you're left constantly proving that you deserve him. The real problem with this phrase is that it undermines your worth. Relationships should be about two people recognizing each other's value and choosing to grow together. But when he says you're lucky to have him, the implication is that he's settling for you, that you should lower your expectations and that you can't do better. It's not just arrogance, it's a subtle way of keeping you dependent. Because if you believe you're lucky just to be with him, you'll overlook red flags, tolerate poor treatment, and accept less than you deserve out of fear of losing what you've been told is the best you'll ever get. Over time, this phrase can change how you see yourself. At first, you might brush it off as humor or confidence, but words have a way of planting seeds. Eventually, you begin to wonder if he's right. Maybe you're not attractive enough. Maybe you don't bring enough to the table. Maybe no one else would want you. And once those doubts take root, they start shaping your decisions. You stop questioning him. You stop expecting more. You stop standing up for yourself. That's how one simple sentence can quietly dismantle your self-esteem piece by piece. This statement is also dangerous because it's rarely about gratitude. It's about control. A healthy partner doesn't remind you of how lucky you are to have them. They show gratitude for having you. They don't compare themselves to some imaginary alternative. They choose you with pride. When a man frames himself as your best option, he's positioning himself as irreplaceable. That makes it easier for him to justify poor behavior because in his mind, you'll accept it since you're the one who supposedly benefits more from the relationship. That's not partnership, that's manipulation disguised as charm. It's worth paying attention to the tone and the timing when he says it. Does he use it in arguments? Does he throw it out when you bring up something that bothers you? Does it come up when he wants to avoid accountability? If so, it's not a compliment, it's a deflection. Instead of addressing your concern, he tries to reframe the conversation so you feel indebted to him. It may seem small in the moment, but it teaches you to stop raising issues because every time you do, you're reminded that you're the one who should be grateful. And over time, silence becomes easier than speaking up. Now compare that to what healthy communication sounds like. A man who values you says, "I'm lucky to have you," not the other way around. He notices your strengths, your efforts, your presence, and he expresses appreciation instead of superiority. That's the kind of partnership that makes you feel safe and respected. It's not about one person being the prize and the other being the pursuer. It's about both people choosing each other daily with mutual admiration. That's what real confidence looks like, not putting someone down to elevate yourself. So when you hear, "You're lucky I'm with you," don't just listen to the words, listen to the attitude behind them. Ask yourself whether his words make you feel valued or diminished. Ask yourself if this is a one-time slip or a consistent pattern. And most importantly, ask yourself whether this relationship makes you feel like an equal partner or like someone who constantly needs to be reminded of their place. Because love that needs to put you down to hold you close is not love at all. When a man says, "That's just how I am," he's not describing his personality, he's excusing his behavior. It's a way of shutting down the conversation and avoiding accountability. Instead of listening to your concern and making an effort to improve, he labels his flaws as permanent and unchangeable. What he's really saying is, "I don't plan to do better, so you'll need to lower your expectations." And once that sentence is spoken enough, it sets the tone for a relationship where growth and respect are optional on his side but required on yours. The phrase sounds simple, but it's a wall. It blocks responsibility, it blocks empathy, and it blocks progress. When someone tells you, "That's just how I am," they're not only dismissing the problem, they're dismissing your feelings about it. Maybe it's about the way he talks to you. Maybe it's about effort in the relationship. Maybe it's about boundaries you've expressed. Whatever it is, the moment he leans on that sentence, he's drawing a hard line that says, "I'm not willing to change, but you should be willing to accept it." That's not a compromise. That's a command. Over time, this mindset turns into a trap, because once you accept, "That's just how I am," for one behavior, it's easier for him to use it again. Maybe it starts with sarcasm or dismissive comments, then it becomes temper issues, lack of effort, or ignoring responsibilities. And every time you bring it up, the same phrase gets recycled as an excuse. Before you know it, you're not in a relationship where growth is possible. You're in a relationship where excuses are the standard. And excuses never build anything. They only protect what's broken. It's important to recognize the difference between personality and behavior. Personality is who you are. Behavior is what you choose. Saying, "That's just how I am," blurs the two on purpose because it makes bad choices look like fixed traits. But the truth is, anyone can choose to be kinder, more patient, more responsible, more respectful. Growth is always a choice. When he refuses to separate who he is from what he does, he's showing you that he values his comfort over your feelings. That's not self-awareness, that's stubbornness packaged as identity. A healthy relationship requires both people to be willing to adjust, adapt, and grow. It doesn't mean perfection, but but it does mean effort. A man who cares about you will hear your concern and at least try to do better. He might say, "I've always done things this way, but I'll work on it." Or, "I didn't realize how this affects you, I'll pay more attention." Notice the difference. One version is a brick wall, the other is an open door. One says, "Deal with it," the other says, "I'll meet you halfway." That's the difference between a partner who values growth and a partner who values excuses. This phrase is also dangerous because it can slowly shift the blame onto you. If he claims that's just who he is, then the problem becomes your reaction. You end up feeling guilty for expecting more, guilty for asking for change, guilty for wanting respect. And once guilt enters the picture, it becomes harder to set boundaries. You start questioning whether your standards are too high or if you're being unfair. But the truth is, asking someone to treat you with kindness, effort, or respect isn't asking too much. It's asking for the basics. And if someone can't even attempt that, it's not your job to lower your standards. It's their job to raise their effort. So when you hear, "That's just how I am," pay close attention. Ask yourself, is this about something small, or is this about a deeper refusal to grow? Ask whether this statement is coming from someone who occasionally slips up or someone who uses it every time accountability shows up. Because love that hides behind excuses isn't love that grows. And if growth isn't possible, neither is a healthy, lasting relationship. When a man says, "No one else will want you," that's not a statement of truth. That's a tactic of control. It's designed to cut you down, not lift you up. At its core, it's emotional manipulation meant to keep you small, insecure, and dependent. Because if you start to believe that no one else would want you, then you'll feel trapped. You'll stay not because the relationship is healthy, but because fear convinces you that you don't have other options. That's not love, that's captivity dressed up as commitment. This phrase strikes at the deepest part of self-worth. Everyone wants to feel chosen, valued, and appreciated. But when someone tells you that no one else would want you, they are deliberately attacking your confidence so that you lean harder on them. It's an intentional strategy. If he can weaken how you see yourself, he strengthens his control over the relationship. It's not about truth, it's about power. And once power takes over where love should be, the relationship stops being about connection and becomes about dominance. What makes this phrase even more harmful is that it can echo in your mind long after it's been spoken. Even if you know deep down it isn't true, those words can replay when you're alone, when you're insecure, when you're second-guessing yourself. And repetition is powerful. Over time, you start internalizing the lie. You hesitate to leave even when you're unhappy. You doubt your ability to be loved by someone else. You question your value. That's how manipulation works. It doesn't just control you in the moment. It shapes how you see yourself moving forward. A healthy partner never uses fear as a weapon. A man who truly cares about you will remind you of your value, not diminish it. He'll say things like, "I'm grateful to have you," or "I don't want to lose you," because his love is rooted in appreciation, not control. There's a huge difference between someone who cherishes you and someone who convinces you no one else would. One empowers you, the other imprisons you. And the one who imprisons you is showing you with his words that his love is conditional on your fear, not on your freedom. This phrase is also a reflection of his own insecurity. When someone says, "No one else will want you," what they often mean is, "I'm afraid of losing control over you." Instead of building security through trust, honesty, and respect, they try to build it by tearing you down. But real security doesn't come from making your partner feel less. It comes from making your partner feel safe. And when he chooses to use fear instead of reassurance, he's showing you that he values power over partnership. That's not a slip of the tongue. It's a window into how he really thinks. It's important to remember that your value is not defined by one person's opinion, especially not one person who benefits from making you feel small. Your worth doesn't decrease just because someone fails to see it. In fact, the very act of someone saying, "No one else will want you," reveals more about their lack of character than about your value. Because people who truly understand love don't weaponize it, they honor it. They don't make you question your place in the world, they make you feel like you belong even more. And if someone can't do that, the problem isn't you, it's them. So when you hear those words, recognize them for what they are, manipulation. See them as the attempt to control you that they are. Don't take them in as truth, don't replay them as fact, and don't let them take root in your mind. Because love that needs to convince you you're unwanted anywhere else is not love, it's control, and control has no place in a healthy relationship.